Have you ever been in a networking event where you meet people, but things become super awkward and you have no idea how to continue that conversation? Now, if this ever happens to you, I would like to welcome you to the Influence Show where influence meets breakthrough. Now, in today's episode, we are going to talk about how are you able to keep any conversation going, and I'm going to share with you about the 5 tricks for you to continue those conversations without being awkward. So with that being said, today I have my partner here with me, which is Wicked.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Shuyi.
All right, so let's dive right into our session here today. So before we go right in, so Wicked, have you ever been awkward in a conversation before?
Oh, it's always an awkward situation. I mean, it used to be even worse last time, but now I still feel awkward. But I feel like now I'm more polished, more experienced to handle some of this awkwardness.
That's very nice, all right? So today we're gonna dive right into the 5 tips on how to continue any conversation without going blank, right? So tip number 1 is what I call the Ford technique, F-O-R-D. So the Ford technique is basically your conversation GPS, where it will guide you in every conversation. And especially if you do not know what to say, so F-O-R-D, Ford, stands for family, occupation, recreation, and also dreams. So maybe Wicked, you want to start off by explaining what is this all about?
When you actually bring out this Ford technique, I think that is really a very good way to summarize all these things, right? Because I see a lot of people when they have this conversation, they don't know how to start. So they just read somewhere that let's talk about golf, let's talk about what, then they're like a machine gun. So I think that if you can actually start from family, occupation, so these are the things that people are relate the most. Yeah. So I feel that basically family, you can actually start by actually talking about, hey, where are you from? How's your journey when you are moving or to where you are actually residing right now. So I think that's actually a very good thing to start. Generally, people are more okay to talk about some of their background.
Yeah.
So the next one, occupation. Yeah. So do you normally ask people like what do they do and all these things?
I think this is actually a very common topic, right? Usually, like if you don't know what to say, the first thing that you actually ask people is, hey, actually, what do you do for your occupation, right? And then from there, people talk about career, and then from there, you can actually expand to a lot of different topics.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's something they can actually do because when you ask someone what do they do, then they will actually have something to share with you as well. And the next one, next in R is actually recreation.
Yeah.
It's like, what do they do? You ask that to people?
Yeah, so I think recreation is that because sometimes when you ask occupation, it seems to be like a little bit dry because you are just talking about work, right? So recreation is basically asking them about like what do they like to do on the side, like what's their hobby, what's their passion. So when you talk about things that is more lighter or more relaxed, that's where people are opening up even better to you as well.
When people ask you like, so what do you do during your hobby? So normally, how would you answer?
Yeah, so probably if I know that like the person likes sports, then I'll probably talk more about sports and I'll tell them that, hey, you know what? During weekends, I love playing badminton because I used to be a badminton player, right? So from there, then recreation, if I know that the person is a badminton fan, then we can actually talk about like All England, Malaysia Open. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about for recreation.
Okay, so I think that if you are like me, right, I don't really watch a lot of sports, right? Then you can actually go for your last resort, which is actually the D in the Ford method, is actually dreams, right? So you see, family, occupation, you're maybe talking about the past, right? Occupation and also recreation is more like the present, right? Dreams is like the future. So in future, where else you want to travel? What are some of the things that you want to do? What is the most important thing for you? So that's something that when you build enough rapport, that's something to make the conversation go deeper.
Yeah, that's really true, right? And I think dreams, especially, what I would love to always ask people is that, hey, how do you actually see yourself in the next 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years? So then the person will tell you about their dream. Oh, I love vacation. I love to actually go to this place to visit this, right? I love to being here with my family members, right? So when they tell you about their dreams, then from there you can actually expand to a lot of different topics like what kind of vacations do you like to go to, or even the countries as well. And then people are able to relate to them, right? So I think that ultimately, right, why are we asking like these 4 categories of question is because when people answer the question that you ask them, they feel important. So I always believe that like people like people who makes them feel important, right? So when you are actually getting them to talk more about like this Ford technique, that's where they actually feel important.
Okay.
Right. So now moving on, right? Like, have you ever been in a conversation where even though you know the fourth technique, but sometimes like you just don't know how to like continue the entire conversation?
Yeah, especially if the person I'm speaking to, right, is
Yeah.
like, they reply me with one word, they're okay, this, that, then I really don't know how to reply sometimes.
Right. And
Yeah.
things become super awkward after that, right?
Yeah, and then you're like stuck in between. You're like, should I continue? Should I start a new topic? Or should I just grab a drink and just never come back? Yeah, so like, does normally in these situations, what do you normally do?
So I think that this is actually a technique that I actually learned, right? And this leads us to like tip number 2, right? So it's called the echo and expand method. Right? So echo and expand method, right, is that like when you don't know what to say, or especially like let's just say you are not paying attention to this person and then you forget everything that this person said, what you do is that you pick maybe the last few words that this person actually said and you echo after them and you actually expand those ideas, right? So for example, let's just say if this person tells you that, hey, you know what, this week has been a crazy week for me, right? So you don't know how to actually do it. So what you do is that you take the word crazy week and then you just echo after it. Crazy week? Like, what do you mean by that? So from there, then the person will actually talk more, and that's where the conversation keeps on going.
Yeah, like a parrot, basically, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Now, can you share with us like what's the rationale behind this? Like, how come when we echo or just repeat something and the conversation just magically keeps on continue?
So I think that it's because when you echo after it, people feel that you actually hear them out, right? People feel that you are actually listening, right? And then you actually get them to share more. So that is where your listening skills comes to place, right? Because people love talking about themselves, right? So if you can just echo after it, get them to talk, right? And then you continue this process, then eventually the conversation can just continues.
Yeah, and I think this is actually something very interesting, right? If let's say if we are talking to someone who always gives us a one-word answer, who always gives us like just want to end the conversation. I like golf, I like car. Then you don't know how to continue, right?
Yeah.
So if you use this echo, right? So for example, you say that I love car. Then I say, oh, you love cars? Then the person will feel compelled to actually answer you more. And as these interactions goes more and more, right, you are also training the other person to give you a more elaborated answer rather than just a one-word answer.
Correct.
Then your conversation becomes much more meaningful after that as well.
Yeah. And I realized that I use this a lot, especially during relationship as well, right? Especially relationship when you have a crazy day, right? And then let's just say if your partner is telling you something, and by the way, this is not advisable for everyone to do, but especially if the partner is telling you something, right? You forget whatever she said in the front, you just pay attention to her final few words.
Oh.
Right? And then after that, you just echo after it, and that's where they talk even more.
That's really nice. I realize I also do that sometimes. So I think this is a relationship trick that you can use. Yeah, and I think this is something very important. I actually read this technique from the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. This guy is like the FBI hostage negotiator. If you read out this book, right, we always thought that, hey, top negotiator like this, right, they must be very good in talking.
Yeah.
But it turns out one of their biggest strategy is actually echoing. He call it mirroring. Basically, it's when the terrorist or when the robber actually talk to them about something, he will just repeat it. So you are frustrated, then he repeat it, mirror the person, and the persons want to tell you even more. And the more he does that, right, the more he built the rapport, and the robber or even the terrorist, right, started to connect more with him and even share more, and eventually become much less defensive. Yeah. So I think this is something very, very powerful. It can be actually used in conversation or even in workplace situation as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because I feel that before you even speak, so you let the other person speak first, right? Because people love talking about themselves. And when they talk more about themselves, like that's where they actually open themselves up a little bit more.
Yeah, then you don't have to pressure yourself, hey, what to talk and all that.
Yes,
let the
correct.
conversation flow.
Yes, that's right, right?
Yeah.
And also I think the next thing that we want to also talk about is that, so like, just like you mentioned, a lot of people, they will actually give you like one word conversation, right? And then eventually you don't know how to actually continue the entire conversation. And let's just say if this continues to go on, right? And even though you know, if you learn the technique just now, but then it still doesn't work, right? So what would you actually do next?
Yeah. So I think that, right, just like I mentioned, some people are very hard to talk to, right? Because whatever that I ask, right, then they will just give me the one word answer, right? And when they give me a one word answer, right, what happened is that I only have one material for me to start talking about. It's either I take it or I leave it.
Yep.
Yeah. So just curious, are you the conversation terminator who is like this? Meaning that when you're talking in a networking session, right, are you someone who always give people one-word answer and all these things? And it makes it very hard for people to continue that conversation. Yeah. So one of the technique that I have actually learned is this thing called the conversation threading. Yeah. So this is a very powerful framework, right? Meaning that, threading, right, it's like threads, right? So if you say, for example, someone asks you, where are you from?
KL.
So it's only one thread there. So this one thread is like, it's either I'm able to grab it, or I can't just grab onto something. But let's try one more thing, right? So if let's say I ask you give me more threads, see if I can talk more about it. So where are you from?
I'm from KL, but then my parents are actually from Kuala Terengganu. So every Chinese New Year, I actually go back celebrate Chinese New Year in Kuala Terengganu.
Nice. Now, this is an example of a conversation threading. You can see that there's actually multiple threads that he left for me. So to continue the conversations, right, I can actually ask more. Oh, you're from KL. Or I can ask him more about a Chinese New Year. I can even ask him something along that thread. So you are giving more materials to your audience to talk with you.
So I think that the biggest problem for a lot of people is that when they give an answer, they only think from their perspective. They don't actually think what the other person can actually answer. So as a powerful communicator, a lot of times we need to go one step ahead to think that today, if we were to give this answer, how would the person respond to us? Right? So that is how we keep the conversation going on and on and on, right? Because there's a lot of threads for you to actually continue that conversation. So it's always about like thinking from the other person's perspective.
Yeah. And I think why people tend to restrict themselves a lot is like they don't want to talk more. I actually heard a lot of people say that, I'm worried that if I talk about this, will people judge me? If I talk about this, will people be interested? So a lot of all these little voices coming up. So, we tend to be very careful. We just say the safest thing, which is say one word or two, or even don't say at all. Yeah. So which is why I always believe, right, if you're in a networking sessions, if you're nervous, remind yourself this. Everybody else is also nervous. You are not alone. Everybody there is craving for connections. As long as you go in with the right intentions, you share a little bit of your things, and then you observe their reactions, then you adjust along the way. Be present. Yeah.
And also I noticed one thing that you actually did in conversation threading is that, so before you even ask a question, right, you will actually set an expectation on how long the answer should be first before you actually throw in the question, so that the person actually understands, this is the kind of answer that you actually expect. So maybe you want to share more about how you actually do that.
Yeah, so I think this one you demonstrated before, right? So for example, if you want to, because maybe when you're talking with your partners, right, and then maybe the partner give you one word answer, probably because they are not sure what is the length of the answer that you are expecting. So how do you do that? Is that you do a demonstrations to your partner. So for example, right, I can actually ask Shui this. Okay, hey Shui, where are you from? So the reason why I asked, right, because I am someone who is always moving since young, and I actually came from Sabah and I moved all the way to KL, and then after that, along the journey, I also moved to other countries when I started different things as well. So I'm just curious, what about yours? So you see, when I ask him like this, right, I'm showing him a demo, so I am expecting this kind of answer. Then chances are the other person will know that, okay, so it's okay to talk about that long. Let me talk about mine as well. Yeah.
All right. So I really love that because I always believe that like when you are able to like give an expectation, people know what kind of answers that you expect. And then there's this thing called the rule of reciprocity. So what this means is that so we tend to return a favor from what other people have done for us, right? So let's just say if you were to set a context, you give me like a 1-paragraph answer, it is very unlikely that I actually give you a 1-word response, right? Because I will actually do my very best to match after what you're trying to say.
That's true. Right? That's true. Yeah. So that's really, really important. And I also think that, right, so I also have a questions for you, like Shui. So have you ever had a time, right, like, in a conversations and all these things, right, halfway through the journey, and then you realize that you forgot, or even you realize that this conversation is actually going nowhere? Yeah. So what can you do to steer the conversation?
All right. So this is something that I have recently read about as well, is what I call the callback hook, right? So what do I mean by the callback hook, right? So like what you said, if you were to, let's just say, forgot certain things in that conversation, you don't know how to use conversation threading, you don't know how to continue it, or maybe like you just think that like this conversation is going nowhere and you want to start another topic, what you can actually do, right? So what the callback hook is that you remember everything that the person actually said from the past, right? And then you actually call back one of the topic and then basically you just focus on that topic. So that's also how you change topic as well. So so I'll give you an example. So let's just say if after I go through certain topics and then basically I feel that this topic is going nowhere, right? So I remember just now that you actually mentioned, for example, that you are actually originated from KL, for example, right? So I could say something like this to that person, okay? So by the way, like earlier you mentioned that you actually originate from KL, right? So just wonder like what do you think about the life in KL? So from there, I call back whatever the person said from the beginning, right? And then I actually throw it back to him to continue that conversation from there. So that way, the person will also think that, hey, I actually pay attention to the little things that I have mentioned at the start, and the trust actually goes up higher.
And how do you prevent it to be very abrupt, like very suddenly we talk about topic B, suddenly you go back to topic A. How do you make the transition a bit smoother?
So I think that what I would normally do is that I would normally just acknowledge them first, right? So thank you so much for sharing with me this, right? I really appreciate it, right? Make them feel heard first. And then I love to use these 3 words, by the way.
Okay.
Right? Because when I use the word, hey, by the way, okay, so I remember what you spoke about earlier on, which I find it really interesting. So again, you make the person feels good, right? Because what you are telling the person, whatever he said at the start is pretty interesting. The person feels good, and then you continue the topic from there. Yeah.
Good. So basically, you really need to be present.
Correct.
In order for you to do this kind of callback, if you are like wondering what to say, worried about how do you look, then all this will not come across your mind already.
Yeah. So what about you? Like, have you ever applied these callback techniques before?
Yeah, definitely there are. Like for example, let's say when I'm in a conversation with someone, and then after that we talk about A, B, and C, right?
Yeah.
Then just now, like topic A is really something that interests me a lot. But then the person got so excited, go to topic B and go to even topic C's already, right? So after I address about topic B and topic C, what happened is that I will do this callback thing as well. It's like, hey, by the way, just now, I remember you mentioned about this, right? Can I actually learn more from you about this? Yeah. So I feel that it's a very fluid thing. It doesn't mean that the conversation is like a one-way flow. Sometimes you can U-turn. Sometimes you can actually, make some turns over there. Most importantly, based on the dynamic there, based on the feeling back then, and what is the topic that you guys want to talk about, and then just gently steer towards that.
Yeah, so that's why I think that in a conversation, right, so people will throw you a lot of pointers, point 1, point 2, point 3, sometimes all the way until like point 10, right? So yes, you can talk about point 1, right? But then you realize that when point 1 actually reaches a dead end, then what you can do is that you can always call back point 2, point 3, and then you can always further expand from there. Right, so if people were just to follow this, right, like it's impossible for you not to have the conversation going, because I think that it's super easy with all this framework for you to have conversations going.
Yeah, and I also want to add one more thing, right? Is that sometimes when people are talking about things that you can't really relate, for example, say I'm in a conversation with a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, right? Or I'm actually talking with a construction. Yeah, I'm not even in constructions. So I think that normally people will always say that we are not in the same channel.
Right.
I can't really connect, right? So for me, right, what I realize is this, right? What you can do is that you can also, based on whatever the person said to you, whatever the expertise that the person actually bring up to you, you can also ask questions, or you can think about, right, how can the lesson that you have learned here apply to your own context? Yeah. So for example, someone actually talk about, I have a friend who is actually like listed a company, and even in the construction world as well. And he talked about how he managed different subcontractors, right? So I don't have subcontractors, but I do have coaches. I do have partners, right? So I actually asked, right, so thank you so much for sharing that with me. Based on how you manage your contractors and all these things, right? I'm just thinking right now, how can I actually apply the same thing to my team of coaches as well? Yeah, so that's how you can actually find relatability, even though from completely different topic.
Yeah, so I agree with that, because so I think there's this process called chunking up that you can always use. So chunking up, it means that like, what is the intention behind you doing this? So for example, managing contractors, right? So the chunk up version for this is basically dealing with people, right? So let's just say if you have no experience to actually manage contractors, but if you were to chunk up the conversation, I like how you manage your contractors, because it's exactly the same when I'm dealing with people as well. So when you chunk them up, then you have common topic to talk about. Yeah, so for me is that usually if they were to go a lot into specificity, so what I would do is that I would actually chunk back up so that I have a common topic to talk to them. Right. So for example, let's just say we talk about sports, for example. Okay. So if this person is super passionate about golf, for example, and I don't know a single thing about golf, right? Yes, I can act that I know and I continue that conversation, but then chances are people can actually tell. Right. But instead, if you look at golf, what is the chunk up of golf?
Sports.
It is actually sports, right? So what I do is that I chunk back up, right? So I love that you actually love golf because golf, this is, I understand like this is the power of sports, right? It brings people together, it makes us fresh. So for me, like in terms of sports, I love badminton. So then you see, I chunk back to the topic that I'm actually familiar with.
Yeah, then you can even chunk it up. Like sports normally relate to discipline.
Nice.
Yeah, then you can talk more about how do you manage.
Yeah.
You have so much things to do yet you can still play golf. I'm also someone who is very disciplined, so
Yeah.
you find commonality.
Yeah, but then I think that the problem with a lot of people is that like when they want to change topic, right? Like they give away like a very awkward kind of energy. It's like like let's just say if you were talking about golf, right? And if I want to change the topic to badminton, then I'm not sure how to change it, right?
Oh, by the way,
Yeah, so you can't go in to say, hey, by the way, like it's very weird for you to do that, right? So if it was you, how would you actually change the topic without killing like the energy, the atmosphere, and all this thing?
Okay, so to me, right, if I were to change a topic, right, like what you mentioned just now, first thing, if you want to change a topic gracefully, is to first acknowledge first. Because if let's say you are talking about golf, right, you say, I like football. That's like very, very disruptive, right? So what I would do is actually, oh, nice. So that's something that is really interesting about what you mentioned there about golf. I'm someone who also loves sports as well. So I'm just curious, like how do you actually manage time for that? So actually see what I did just now, right? Basically, there's actually a 3-step process going on from there.
Okay.
First thing, right, is actually acknowledge. So I acknowledge whatever the person is saying first. It's like I echo back what the person is actually saying. Oh, you like golf? Oh, that's really interesting. Okay. Connect is like you actually talk more, like find the commonality. Like what Sri mentioned just now, you are chunking up a little bit. Now, in fact, right, sports is something that I'm really passionate about. Okay. So this is step number 2, connect. Then the third step is to redirect. Is to change to a direction that you want to change. So you talk about sports, right? Then you can actually talk more about the routine, talk more about discipline. For example, you can say things like, I'm just curious, right? You are someone who's so busy, yet you have time for golf every single day, right? How do you manage your time? So now the topic is on time right now.
Right.
Yeah. So that's something that I feel we could actually do as well.
Yeah. So I think that the secret to this is to acknowledge the person, to make sure that the person feels that whatever he's saying is actually important. You are listening to the person, then only you change it subtly, right? So you don't make the person feel like whatever you say, you are not interested and you wanted to change that. Yeah. So I think that acknowledging part and connecting part is really, really powerful.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, when you are running a conversation, it's just like you are driving a car, you know. You can't be straight away go and swerve into people's lane, just change the direction. People are going to haunt you. People are going to say, like, how so sudden? You need to first give signal. Okay, I'm going to change topic. Then you slowly take the right turn. And then after that, when you're ready, just take the full U-turn. So make everything graceful, make everything flow. I think the word is flow. It has to be a flow. It cannot be like a task by task, point 1, point 2, point 3, and point 4 like that.
All right, very nice, right? So you can see that, you see, so far we covered like 5 different strategies for people to learn how to keep any conversation going. But then like, one of the questions that when we first learn about conversation, right, is like, I need to remember all these 5 things. Like, it's so hard, right? And I still need to pay attention to what this person is actually speaking about. So how should I start? What are your takes on this?
Okay, so if you don't remember anything that you just learned from this podcast, right? I think that one of the things that I always share to people is that you need to start to learn how to trust your first spark. Okay? So you see, right, a lot of times when we're in a conversation with people, right, it's not that we don't have things to say, it's not that we don't have idea, it's not that we don't have opinion, it's that we have opinion, but then our mind is like we are judging this opinion. So we are pushing this thing down, and then we say maybe our second thing, or say something else, or maybe say other weird. That's how the weird things get said, right? So when you learn how to trust your first spark, is that, okay, now I'm here, I'm listening, I have this first spark, I have a question, genuine question that I want to ask, then ask it respectfully, right? So if you learn how to trust your first spark and you learn how to build this muscle up, then chances are when you're in a meeting, you do not have to remember a lot of a framework, tips and tricks and all these things. You are being present.
Right.
Yeah, because sparks after sparks, that's how conversation gets sparked.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the foundation of it is to be genuinely interested in the other person rather than thinking what to say next.
That's true. Yeah. So I feel that even in our podcast session,
Yeah.
I think that we have to learn how to be more fluid and also make things flow as well. Yeah. So, any final tip for our audience?
All right, so I think that to sum it all up, right? So again, today we actually covered 5 different techniques for you to keep any conversation going, right? So just to sum it all up, the first one, FORD technique, right? Family, occupation, recreation, and also dreams. So these are the any topics that you can actually continue from it, right? Second one is to echo after the person and to expand on it, right? And then the third one is about conversation threading. Remember to leave clues in every single conversation that you are actually talking about. The fourth one is to call back, right? To call back any pointers and you expand on that, right? So that's the fourth strategy, right? And the last one is to actually change topic without killing the energy as well. So we talk about 3 steps: acknowledge, connect, and also redirect, right? So with that, I think that the one message that I want everyone here to understand is that remember, you're just talking to another human being, right? So that's why be truly interested, to be truly present with them, right? And not to worry about how you look in front of them, because like what you said, I really love it, is that people have the same fear when they actually meet you as well.
That's true. I have the same fear right now talking to you in this podcast.
All right, so with that, guys, thank you so much again for watching this episode. And if you enjoyed this session, so I would like you guys here to actually subscribe to the button below so that every time we post a new video, you are able to get first-hand notification from it. And also do share it to someone who actually needs to hear this as well. So with that, I wish you guys here all the best and see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.